This evening we have Mr. Keith Bowers, who's with the Small Business Development Center of Florida, and he's also the administrator and program chair for the Small Business Development Center on the campus of Florida A&M University in Tallahassee. So, hey, welcome, Keith. How's everything in Tallahassee?
Thank you. Everything's great here in Tallahassee, just busy. So
Okay.
Glad to be here with you.
Good. Now, I'm wearing my orange and green today.
I
And
see that, yeah.
for those of you that don't know, Keith and I were actually classmates at Florida A&M University at the School of Business and Industry. And I saw him present this information to a group and audience a couple weeks ago. And I said, what a great resource to bring to constituents and people in my area in the state of Florida, which is right around Fort Pierce, St. Lucie County. And we have a connection here, and I'm sure Keith will talk a little bit about that later on in the presentation.
Yeah.
But there were a number of people in the community, Keith, who had some concerns. You know, they heard all about the Paycheck Protection Program. They were very excited when it first rolled out, and a couple of weeks went by, and people didn't hear anything. And then the frustration started to grow, and people just weren't able to kind of see it materialized. And just the other day, I was talking with someone, and they were talking about their church specifically, and they were having some misunderstandings and some challenges as to understand how could churches qualify. And so I reached out to you and thanks for accepting the opportunity. And I know you're going to walk us through a number of slides here, but I just kind of wanted to set the stage for people that may be tuning in live to listen to this. And understand that, you know, this is something that will absolutely answer those questions. We're going to talk about small businesses, and we're going to talk about churches, and when it comes down to the Paycheck Protection Program. So without any further ado, Keith, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay.
Feel free to set the stage on how you want to run this, and I'll just step back.
All right. Well, thank you, Curtis. And again, it's always great talking to you. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about some of the real issues and concerns about the Paycheck Protection Program. Overall, the program, as people have probably observed, kind of got off to a rough start. It was done because we were facing an economic crisis that no one had seen before. And, you know, Congress tried to ramp up a program. And anytime you try to roll something out that quickly, it's just inherent that there are going to be some things that there's some misfires and some miscommunication. So I think, as you mentioned, Curtis, during the first phase, after they rolled it out, there was a big problem with the website. They weren't sure if the banks were online taking those applications, and you couldn't get any answers on the phone. Because everybody was calling, but now things are, they have made adjustments as the program has been in existence, and they continue to make adjustments, and we'll talk about those. But the key takeaway that I would like folks to understand in this presentation is that we've been involved in this Paycheck Protection Program for about 3 months now. And we have assisted our clients in signing up, working through the issues, and the program is real. We've had a lot of success with our clients. You know, there were some frustrations along the way, but overall, the program has provided the much needed assistance for our clients. And it is something that if you can work through now, and we'll talk about what needs to happen in order for you to be successful in your application for the Paycheck Protection Program. So let me get started here.
Keith, as you get ready to get started, I want to also make sure that no one runs away. So when you say programs and working with people, all of these are non-charged, non-fee charged. These are all free assisted programs.
That is correct.
Okay. All right.
That's correct. So I'm the director, as Curtis mentioned, I'm the director for the Small Business Development Center at Florida A&M. We're funded by SBA and the Florida legislature, and the university provides a match for the services that we provide and host the center. but there are centers in, or representation for centers in all 67 counties in the state of Florida. In the Fort Pierce area, the Small Business Development Center is housed at the Indian River State College. We work hand in hand with those folks there. They run a fine small business development center, and they are geared up to assist in any way possible. Again, all of the services that we provide are at no cost. So please, utilize these services. And you've got, like I said, we've been working with this for over 3 months now. So you've got some seasoned folks in there that can assist you. So let me get into the meat of the presentation. So before we get started, it might be helpful, Curtis, you tell me if it would be helpful for people that are participating, just to put in their contact information. So if you want a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, I'll be more than happy to provide that to you. But we just need your a good email address, and we'll email that over to you. If you are on the call, it's helpful if you would mute your microphone. So unless you have a question or like to make a comment, so we won't pick up any feedback or any outside noise. And then finally, it is being recorded. This workshop's being recorded, and I believe Curtis has plans to provide that in several different formats after today. So, all right, so let's get into the program here. Let me give you some updates, because again, SBA, it has been a ever evolving process. You probably heard at one point the funds had been all depleted, and then there was a second round of funding, and the word on the street was that second round of funding was only going to last at the most 3 weeks. Well, we're still, as we speak today, there's still $92 billion available for small businesses and nonprofit organizations under the Paycheck Protection Program. Banks are still accepting applications, and more banks have started to enter into the application delivery mode. So you have some online lenders, you have some credit unions, you have some Black-owned banks and institutions that are entering into the delivery process. So there are more banks participating. The other update is that the Congress passed a couple of Fridays ago. Congress passed the Paycheck Protection Flexibility Act, which gave a lot more leeway to businesses as it relates to how they could use the funds that they received. And we'll cover that. And they've also updated the application process and for the forgiveness. And we'll go into detail about the forgiveness, because that's important. The key is, if you spend this money and using it as the way that SBA has prescribed, it could turn into a grant. So all the funds that you obtain from SBA, if they're used properly, they can turn into a grant, but you have to apply for the forgiveness for that. And the final update, today, this morning, we learned that the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program has reopened for a while. It had been closed and only available for businesses that were working in the agricultural industry. But now it has been open to all businesses and nonprofits, including faith-based organizations. So that is another program. We'll talk briefly about that, because that is a really good resource for small businesses and faith-based organizations and nonprofits. Okay, so the loans are made by participating lenders. So in your area, there are lenders that participate in the program. And in terms of the eligibility to receive funding through the Paycheck Protection Program, you have to be considered a small business. Now, SBA's definition of small business is businesses with fewer than 500 employees. and the business owner cannot have a maximum, his net worth or her net worth cannot exceed $15 million, and they could not have earned more than netted more than $5 million for the last 2 years. So when you think about it, that casts a very, very broad net. That's a lot of businesses that are out there. And I would say that is 100% of our client base. So all of the folks that we've been working with, 100% of them meet this eligibility requirement. The second part is the types of businesses that are eligible. So whether you're a sole proprietor or an independent contractor or a self-employed individual, you are eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program. And then of course, nonprofits, including faith-based entities, are eligible for the program. And we're going to talk a little bit more about faith-based organizations. So the definition, the SBA's definition of faith-based entities are entities such as temples, mosques, synagogues, your houses of worship, and also auxiliary departments within a church itself, and also church conventions. So if you are part of a, like the Southern Christian Heritage Convention, your organization would be eligible to receive funding through the Paycheck Protection Program. One other commonly asked question when we talk about faith-based participation is, folks want to know, well, we didn't formally declare ourselves as a 501c3, or we didn't receive we didn't apply to the IRS to receive that determination letter stating that we're a 501c3. That happens a lot in the faith-based community, but that is not a requirement. So you would still be eligible even if you have not been deemed as a 501c3 by the IRS.
So that's an important point, I think.
Yes. It's like I said, most churches, a lot of churches have not gone through that step, right, and thought that they were ineligible. But the SBA and the Treasury Department made that determination early on in this process and said that that would not disqualify a faith-based organization.
So what you're saying, Keith, is that once they fill out the application, and as far as documents that will document that, that's not one that they're going to ask for that will disqualify you.
That's correct.
Okay, so it's just a simple application and fill out the church information, address, phone number, right, pastor's name, etc. But when it comes to actually having that letter saying that you're 501c3, you don't have to have that.
You don't have to have that. That's correct.
Good.
Yeah. Also, another question we get asked a lot is, well, if I apply for this, am I sacrificing my religious autonomy? Will I have to start disclosing more information than to the government than I feel comfortable with? Or am I subject to any additional oversight by the federal government? And you do not, absolutely not. You do not sacrifice your religious autonomy by accepting funds from the Paycheck Protection Program. Now, there is one caveat. The receipt of the loan, it does trigger federal non-discrimination laws. So as it pertains to race and ethnicity, you have to agree that your religious organization does not discriminate on the grounds of race and ethnicity. Also, your religious organization cannot discriminate on the grounds of sex. So that includes transgender rights, gay marriage, and termination of pregnancy. So if you would preclude anyone from being a part of your church or your congregation based on race or ethnicity or sexual orientation, you would not be eligible. So, and they would ask you those questions. Now, non-discrimination laws do not apply once you have repaid the loan. So that is one thing that is sort of tucked away in the fine print of this legislation. Again, they just want to make sure that in what you have done to this point, you are agreeing that you will not discriminate based on protected categories. Okay? So we're going to talk about how to apply. So you have to go through a participating lender to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program. And later on in the presentation, I've got a link for all of the participating lenders in the Fort Pierce area. And if you've got a relationship with a financial institution, you may want to check with them to see if they are accepting applications, because they have your information, you have a relationship, they know you, and it might be an easier route to take. But you don't necessarily have to go that route. If your bank is not participating, then we provided a link for you, and this link also will take you to the various participating lenders. Now, the deadline is fast approaching. The deadline is the end of this month, so it's 2 weeks from today. Your application has to be submitted before June 30th. So I would urge you, if you are interested, please, starting tomorrow or even this evening, start pulling together the information for your application, because it has to be in. The deadline is June 30th. And applications are on a first come, first served basis. But again, there is $92 billion that's out there, and the application pace and the frequency of folks making applications have slowed down significantly from the initial launch of the program.
So Keith, let me ask you, because as a small business owner myself, I've gone through this process successfully with this PPP program and the disaster loan. Mm-hmm. And I can recall filling out my application. I'm sure it's pretty standardized application, yeah, basic information that they'll ask for. So churches, particularly in a tax situation, I don't know if you're going to get into that or not, as far as, some of the things that may be required to determine that income. How would that happen? Because I'm not familiar with churches and income taxes, or how they file, or if they're even required to file based on that. Can you give any kind of leeway with that, or sure, what they would need to document that financial loss or statement?
Right. Well, so the key thing is with the Paycheck Protection Program is what they are using to base the loan amount is how much you have paid in payroll. So they're looking at any record that you have for paying employees of the church, the pastor, church secretary. If you've got a larger staff, or you run another church auxiliary, such as a daycare or a food bank program, when you're paying someone through the church, that is what the SBA wants to understand. How much have you spent in payroll? So it doesn't really boil down to whether the church was profitable or not, or if they experienced a loss, because a lot of churches don't file income taxes because they don't have to. But what you have to do is you have to document what you are paying your employees, because they have to file taxes. So everything that we talk about in terms of documentation has to do with being able to verify the expenses that you have historically spent on payroll and what you anticipate spending on payroll going forward.
And I think that's the important part, right? So if, some of these churches or organizations, religious organization, may have paid people on 1099 type contracts, maybe. So there's probably a a compilation or an addition or something where that all that's totaled up. And so
Right.
that's the amount that you would have to show that documentation. Let's say it's just, I don't know, $10,000. You'd have to show that, and then you put that into the worksheet, and it spits out a certain amount, and then that's how you would document what you'll be asking for. Because really, this is, like they say, the payroll protection. So this program is designed to help you continue to meet payroll and keep those people employed. And so how you document that is how you will be able to garner the dollars to continue doing it.
Right. And the whole, to take a step back, the bigger picture of it is, being very realistic, likelihood of the church's revenue during the COVID-19 crisis has been impacted heavily because people, because of the stay-at-home order and social distancing, these congregations haven't been meeting in person. And so that means that the tithes and offerings have probably been impacted by that. However, you still are obligated to pay employees because they still continue to work on behalf of the church. And so what this program says, well, we realize that your revenue has been impacted. We don't want you to not pay employees. So let's figure out how much you have been paying employees, and we will provide the resource so you can continue to pay employees. And also, if you have overhead, if you are leasing your facility and paying rent, we want to make sure that you're able to meet those obligations. So those are also eligible expenses. If you are purchasing your church and you're making payments to the bank, SBA wants to be able to identify how much you're paying in interest on a monthly basis when you make your payments to the bank for your church, and those are eligible expenses. So again, it is a great resource that will allow you to provide, to continue to cover all of your expenses without having to make any additional sacrifices.
Great point. Okay.
So we'll talk, because again, we're going to talk about small businesses and nonprofit faith-based organizations. And so we'll go over now, we'll get into the documents that you'll need to apply. So if you are a corporation or an LLC, a general partnership, or a nonprofit organization, to include faith-based organizations, what you would need is a copy of a government issued ID. They want to make sure that you are the responsible person applying for the assistance. Any organizational documents that you have, such as your articles of incorporation. For religious organizations, it could be your church charter, it could be your bylaws, it could be anything that's done on behalf of your trustees or any organizational boards there, just to give to establish that this is a organization. So any organizational documents. And then we get into the ability to document what you have paid in payroll. So there's a form, the IRS form 941, which is a quarterly payroll reporting form. So for every 3 months, most organizations will complete a form 941 that reports to the IRS how much we have paid in payroll, how much we have withheld for various taxes, and they're required to submit that to the IRS. If you haven't done it on a quarterly basis, you could use a 940, which is an annual payroll reporting form from the IRS. So you could either provide 4 Form 941s, which are quarterly payroll reports, or you can provide one annual payroll report. And as Curtis mentioned, if you have folks that are 1099s for religious organizations, if you're paying someone using a 1099, all you'd have to do is provide your 1099s that you have paid to those people working at the nonprofit organization or the church, or even within your corporation LLC. You just have to provide them with that, saying this is what I paid last year in terms of 1099 employees. So those are the documents that you need to substantiate the level of payroll that you have been paying. And also, if you have folks that are W-2 employees, you can use your W-2s to substantiate the amount that you have paid in payroll. So all this information you would be able to provide to the SBA, and then they use that to determine exactly how much of a loan you will receive. And not only wages, but if you're paying vacation pay, health benefits, retirement, any severance packages or anything like that you have paid out, all of those expenses are eligible and are categorized as payroll expense. Do we have any questions so far? I see we had a couple of folks join us. I don't want to.
So Keith, yeah, we have people on here, and we've got a handful also on Facebook Live. I'm watching both of them.
Okay.
All the lines are muted now, but if you have a comment or question, if you want to type in the chat window, I'm monitoring that. If you joined and you want a copy of these slides, if you put your email address in the chat window, we'll make sure we send out the slides to you as well. And we're recording this call, so it will be available for playback, and I'll be sharing that as a resource. So right now, Keith, it looks like we're pretty clear, and we can move on.
Okay, great. So if your business operates as a sole proprietor or an independent contractor, or you're self-employed and you have employees, you would need basically all of that same information: a government ID, copies of your articles of incorporation, the quarterly payroll reports or the annual payroll report, and then your Schedule C for your company. Because if you're a sole proprietor, you are completing a 1040, which is part of your personal tax returns. But as a portion of that personal tax returns, you have a Schedule C. And in that Schedule C is going to itemize your revenue as well as your expenses. And it would also capture, as part of your expenses, how much you paid out in payroll. Again, they are looking for what you paid in payroll. And a lot of times people say, well, I didn't make any money. That is not an eligibility requirement for the Paycheck Protection Program. If you lost money, that doesn't disqualify you for receiving funds. They are really just trying to figure out how much you have paid in wages and salaries. And they want to make sure that you can continue to do that. So don't let this process intimidate you, or don't think just because you haven't shown a profit that's going to disqualify you. That is far from the case.
So Keith, I would add something kind of personal on that. One of the things too with that small business part, because I went through my personal business bank where I established my business account. To establish that initially, I had to submit my articles of incorporation. So that was one less document, because I was already an established customer of the bank that
right.
I processed my loan through for the PPP program. So that was very helpful with that, and have to worry about that document. But when it came down to the Schedule C, like you said, they were trying to determine that income part of that. And that really was looking at, the amount of revenue you brought in. And some of us don't pay ourselves in these small businesses right away.
Right.
We have some expenses. So you have to be real careful to try to figure that out there with that. So let's go from there.
Okay, good point. Okay, so now if you're a sole proprietor or an independent contractor or self-employed or a single member LLC without employees, and again, if you don't have any employees, what Curtis just said is perfect for this slide, because you don't have employees, but you're paying yourself. Or at the end of the year, what you have made in terms of net income is what you keep. Because if you're a sole proprietor, your business is basically a pass-through to your personal tax responsibility. So if you don't have any employees, you still need a copy of your government issued ID, any type of articles of incorporation. If you are a single member LLC, if you're a sole proprietor, you won't have any articles of incorporation. Or if you're an independent contractor, you might not have articles of incorporation. But if you are a LLC, you will have articles of incorporation. You'll also need your Schedule C. Again, showing exactly what the revenue was generated through your operations for 2019. And then if you have paid any contract labor or contract services, you need to have those 1099s to document what you paid. So in other forms of documentation to confirm your existence as a small business could be your bank statements. So if you have a bank statement that has in the name of your company there, that's all that you would need if you don't have articles of incorporation. Or if you're a sole proprietor, you just have to be able to submit something showing that you have established a business, and you can use your bank statements as documentation. So we'll talk about participating lenders, because I think this is important. You have to, for this program, you have to make it through a participating lender. And for a while, participating lenders were overrun with applications. That is no longer the case. In fact, they are beginning to shift gears and start to anticipate the forgiveness applications that they're going to receive. But when we email you a copy of the presentation, everything that you see that's underlined is a link on the website. So when you have the PowerPoint presentation, you can simply click on the link here, and it will take you to the participating lenders in the Fort Pierce area. And I went on earlier this week and looked at the lenders that are participating. There are a good number of lenders participating in your area, both large and small financial institutions there. So that's important for you to know, because again, that's where the process starts. There are also online participating lenders. Companies such as PayPal, Square, and Intuit all have the application link here at their website, where you can go online and instead of submitting hard copies, you can scan and upload those documents that I was referring to earlier. We've helped a number of clients apply online. And the good thing about the online, once you submit that information, you can usually get an answer within a couple of days. And then you go from there. But so there are many different ways. If you don't have a relationship with a financial institution, then online might be the best route for you to go. And then there are community-based lenders, and I specifically picked out the Black Business Investment Fund. They cover the entire state of Florida. They are one of the few minority certified development financial institutions that are participating in the Paycheck Protection Program. And they are doing a phenomenal job of targeting minority small businesses, because they realize that it takes, in some cases, it takes a little bit more hand-holding and coaching through this process. And they have, basically done a phenomenal job of helping small businesses understand the process and work through that process.
So Keith, let me ask you, with that being said, it sounds like an interesting institution. I've not heard of it, right? And
Okay.
so I'm assuming, use me as an example, if I were to process it and use that link, they would probably treat me as a person that's not a member of that institution. So my process of going through them may be a little bit longer because I don't have a relationship with them, maybe. Is that fair to say? Or?
Are you referring to the Black Business Investment Fund?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
the Black Business Investment Fund, they're not they don't take deposits. All they do is make loans. So
Okay.
you don't necessarily have to have a relationship with them.
Okay.
So, and they purposely wanted to participate in the Paycheck Protection Program because they felt that there might be a barrier that exists with small businesses that don't have conventional relationships, and they wanted to try to bridge that gap. So
Okay.
so they, again, and it is a statewide organization, is uh, a part of the Department of Economic Opportunity for the state of Florida, and there are basically two lenders that are participating under the umbrella of the Black Business Investment Fund. One is the FAMU Credit Union, and the other is a company called Axion. But both of those organizations, again, do a really good job of helping walk through the application process.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. At least now we have, you've given us some platforms here to look at. We have the Fort Pierce lending. So the people online that's from Fort Pierce and want to go specifically here, if your bank's there, you can see that. We have these other big name lenders if you want to go through that, as well as here's a portfolio here of a couple businesses that specifically work with African American or Black businesses and want to make sure you have access to this program and can take it through their institutions to get it. So I think this is great. Again, it's putting the resources out here so that people can have access to this money. And like I said, the biggest thing that I'm seeing here too is that this cutoff is June 30th. This is 2 weeks from now.
Right.
You think any possibility of extension, Keith? Anything on that? You think?
We haven't heard any talk about extensions, because again, everyone thought that this the last allocation would have been gone prior to June 30th. Yeah. So we'll see what will probably happen is at come June 30th, they'll see how much money they have in the program and make a determination if they want to extend it until the funds are exhausted, or if they want to reallocate those funds to the Economic Injury Disaster Program or another program under the CARES Act.
Okay, great. All right. Well, what's next for us here?
But I will say, since you mentioned the June 30th, it should not take you more than 2 to 3 days to pull this information together to apply. Some folks that have it at the ready can make application. Just give you a real quick story. I had one of our clients call me on a Saturday and asked if it was too late to make application. And he and I got on the phone, and we went to PayPal, uploaded his application within 30 minutes. And that was on a Saturday. On Monday, he found out that he was eligible for the loan and received the funds. So again, if make sure you have the information to submit it online. If you're going to submit it online, if you're going to your bank, go in there with the information already in hand. It just makes the process go a lot quicker. But it is not a daunting process. It's not.
Okay.
All right. So let's talk about the forgiveness portion, because that is important. SBA will forgive these paycheck protection programs if you keep all of your employees on the payroll for 8 weeks. Now, they've extended that to 24. Well, 8 weeks, you have an option. And the reason that they gave that option, because some businesses could not bring payroll employees back on the payroll because they were closed. When you think about the restaurants, when you think about the gyms, when you think about the daycares or schools, when they closed, they could not bring employees back on the payroll. So the Paycheck Protection Program would do them no good. They were saying, I'm not going to bring folks back on the payroll and we're closed. It doesn't make sense. So to sort of align with the reopening and the phases that different states are working through to bring folks back into the workplace, they have extended that from basically 2 months to 4 months. They've extended it so you have 24 weeks. Yeah, so you have 24 weeks, so that's 6 months, I'm sorry. You have 6 months from the time that you receive the funds to expend those funds on payroll or rent or mortgage interest or utilities. So, and the other thing that was changed with the Flexibility Act, and under the previous act, 75% of the funds had to go to employees. They have reduced that to 60% has to go to employees, which means 40% can be used to cover your rent, mortgage interest, and utilities and other overhead. So it allows a lot more flexibility, and it makes the program a lot more palatable because, again, not everyone would be able to meet that 8-week window, and not everyone will be able to utilize 75% for payroll. So they allowed a lot more flexibility, and I think that was a really good change for the program. So as long as you meet those requirements, 60% of the funds that you receive go to pay payroll, and the other 40 could go to cover any other allowable expenses, the amount becomes forgiven. Now you have to apply. There's a forgiveness application that you would have to apply for and provide the documentation showing that at least 60% went to payroll and at least 40% went to cover expenses. So you'd have to keep your receipts, you'd have to have payroll reports, you'd have to have canceled checks and things of that nature. But again, 100% of the funds that you receive will be forgivable if you can provide that level of documentation. So, one common question is, well, what happens if for whatever reason I can't document that all of the funds were used in the manner in which SBA wanted me to use those funds? Well, in that event, what is the portion that is not forgiven is converted into a 2-year term loan. So you'd have 24 months to pay it back at an interest rate of 1%. And you don't have to make any payments for the first 6 months. So that is in and of itself, a pretty good resource for you. And, at 1%, you're not going to find that at any bank. I don't care where you go. So
Keith, let me ask you, someone interjected with a question here. Does that include the payroll taxes?
Yes, it includes the payroll taxes.
Okay.
Good question. Yeah, all of your payroll expenses, anything related to payroll is covered with the Paycheck Protection.
Okay.
Another part on the part that is, if it is converted to a 2-year term loan, there's no collateral. SBA is not going to require you to sign as a personal guarantee on the loan, and there are no fees or charges associated with the loan. So
Okay.
again, and to apply for the forgiveness, you have to submit your documentation just showing that you used the funds in the manner in which SBA intended.
Okay.
All right, so that wraps up the Paycheck Protection Program. And I wanted to talk briefly about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Again, this program, they opened up the portal for this program this morning, and it is different from the Paycheck Protection Program, where it is a loan. However, the loan it has some pretty favorable rates, from which we'll talk about. But the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program provides up to $150,000 in working capital for businesses that have suffered any type of economic loss related to the COVID-19 crisis. The applicant is done online, and you don't put in a loan amount. That's one key thing, because we've helped some folks complete this online application. You don't put in a loan amount. You answer the questions that you're asked online, and you have to show that you have suffered substantial economic injury. And then SBA determines the loan amount, and they also determine the terms of the loan. So how long the amortization period is. The rate of the loan for a for-profit organization is a fixed rate of 3.75% for up to 30 years. For nonprofit organizations and faith-based organizations, the interest rate is 2.75% fixed for up to 30 years. And we've helped a couple of nonprofit organizations receive the loan. And what happens is, once you submit the application for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan and they receive all the information, your first communication from SBA will probably be an advance, because what they're doing is they're giving you an advance of $1,000 per employee. So that'll be the first thing that shows up in your bank account. And then that portion of the advance does not have to be repaid. And then they figure out how much you would qualify for based on the information. And again, they set the amortization period to make sure that you're able to meet the obligation. And the best way to get more information about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan is to visit this website. And we, again, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, the Small Business Development Centers are really here to assist. And if you have any questions, or before you start working on the application process, please reach out to one of our centers. If you feel more comfortable working with us here in Tallahassee, that's fine. Just reach out to us. If it's more convenient for you, or if you've got a relationship with SBDC there in Fort Pierce, reach out to those folks. But we're all singing from the same hymn book. We all know the process, and we all want to help. But again, just follow up with us and let us help you work through this process. It's very important because we need small businesses to survive this crisis. We need faith-based organizations to come out of this crisis and provide the services, to uplift our community. So it's important, and we sort of, we realize the impact that faith-based organizations and nonprofit organizations have. And we definitely realize the impact that small businesses have on our economic landscape. So it's in all of our interests to make sure that you have these resources. These resources are user-friendly and that we provide support for you throughout the process. And with that, we'll open the floor for any additional questions. And then I'll leave this slide up if you want to reach out and give me a call if you have any questions, or if you think of anything after we close out today. Please feel free to give me a call or drop me an email. Also, you can visit our website, sbdcfamu.org. And beyond this, on the other side of this crisis, we love to work with your small businesses. We provide not only these services, but we provide services, in-depth consulting services for small businesses, all at no cost. So we love for you to become clients, and so we can help you in any way that we can.
Keith, I can't thank you enough for this. This has been invaluable. I really feel as though some questions have been answered here, some of the comments I've gotten and emails back and forth. We will be sharing this recording to those that want the slides, and provided that, I will send the slides out as well. And I would just encourage that you spread the word here. There was a lot of information in this for faith-based organizations. There's a lot of information for small businesses. And I can't impress upon you enough that Keith is in Tallahassee with this. We also have a center right here in Fort Pierce. If you want to establish a relationship with them at Indian River State College, it may be a shorter drive for you to just go there if you'd like to be kind of face-to-face per se with someone. But Keith has also made himself available. So thank you, Keith. I greatly appreciate that. And if certainly people are comfortable with that and want to talk with you, thank you for availing yourself for that. I did have one question from someone kind of coming from our Facebook audience is, you know, let's say you've applied for this SBA type loan and you haven't heard anything right now. What would you recommend that they do now?
If you've applied and you haven't heard anything, once you applied, you should have received a file number from SBA, and there is a 800 number, 888 number that is on SBA's website that you can call and provide them with your file number, and they should be able to give you an update or status on where it is. And that is a very common question because again, SBA is sort of backlogged in trying to get all this stuff, all these loans processed. So it takes them just a little bit longer. But if you haven't heard, I would just give it some time and then call that number, provide them with that case, that file number, and then ask them for a status update on it. Or if you apply through your lender, you can go to your lender and ask them, because they will be able to see exactly where it is in the system.
You know, and Keith, I think that's the point that I would say. When I went through the process myself for my business, I used my lender. So I was talking directly to the loan officer.
Yeah.
That processing. So I didn't have somebody that didn't know me and didn't have to worry about getting the SBDC and their backlog. So I think that you made that in the presentation. If you have that relationship, or you can go through an institution that you currently work with, your process is going to be much faster and quicker. And then you also in your presentation provided some other larger links to institutions that are online, like PayPal and Intuit.
Yeah.
So that you can use them if you don't want to use your lender or you don't have a banking institution. So again, I can't thank you, Keith. I'm going to hold you to that. I'm a small business owner myself, and I would like to do more for my community here. And maybe we'll talk further down the line about some of those partnerships and workshops and things that we can do together here to serve our community. Because, you know, I really think that, you know, COVID has showed us one thing. The civil unrest and injustices that we're working through right now, you know, now is the time for small businesses to really take off and flourish, and for people to take control of that wealth and opportunity that's out there. A lot of us have talents, and a lot of us have have what I call day jobs, and a lot of us have side hustles and gigs. And
Yeah.
now it's time to really be trying to take that side hustle and gig and legitimize it so
Right.
that when things like this come up, you're in the arena to receive support. You're in the arena to receive the services of companies like yourself. And I just can't impress upon people enough to turn that side hustle and gig into an LLC and get it legitimized and get it registered, and let's use that pass through to help offset some of that stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We got to use it. So I'm a big proponent. So I'm going to hold you to it, Keith.
Okay. Look
I don't
forward
see,
to it.
yeah, I don't see any other questions. So we're going to end this right now, and that's exactly 1 hour. You know, we're coming up on the 1 hour mark. So Keith, thanks again, buddy. All the best to you and the family, and be safe.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. You're welcome.
All right. Take care.